Good afternoon. Thank you to everyone that came out today. My name is Kate Driscoll. I'm the curator of exhibitions and collections here at the Hudgens. I've had the privilege of working with both of these wonderful men during their exhibitions, and I'm so happy that they've made friends and they want to share conversation with you guys. So to start off, if each of you would introduce yourselves and talk about your work and your exhibition, and then I'll let you guys go from there. Dwayne, you can take it away.
Hello. All right. Perfect. Thank you so much, Kate. Thank you, Laura. Where'd she go? Laura's around here somewhere. But yeah, just so grateful for the Hudgens and grateful for Olu sharing the stage with me today. Very grateful. My exhibition that's up right now, it's in the Georgia Gallery, is titled Airfoils. It is inspired by my childhood fascinations, and then it goes into being able, for me, it was a way to heal throughout my story. When I was 8 years old, I took my first flying lesson. Always knew what I wanted to do, achieve that dream. And in 2016, I had an accident and developed a rare chronic pain condition called complex regional pain syndrome. I was no longer able to fly after that, and it was very tough for me. There was a lot of struggles. As much as I didn't think it had become part of my identity, it was very much part of me. And through God's grace, I was introduced into some wonderful people throughout my therapy and things like that. And I went on a bird watching trip. And through that bird watching trip, I was able to reconnect with aviation in a way that I'd never even seen the birds like that before. And so the birds kind of came to me, and the birds helped me heal throughout the situation. But they were also able to allow me to reattach myself wonderful sculptors and different mediums inspired me to continue to process the emotions and things like that through it. And one of the ones that I just really enjoyed making is Critical Angle of Attack. It is a sculpture put together of folded photographs of skyscapes, but I was just making paper airplanes as I was doing it, and it just allowed me to reconnect with that childhood love that I had for aviation right from the beginning, and just really helped me be able to I could just feel it again. I was able to just completely reconnect with flying and that love that I had for it, and now being able to process it in a completely different way. And then through doing my photographs and healing myself, I've also been able to share my story and help in advocating for others with accessibility needs. One of the wonderful things that I loved working with the Hudgens on doing was creating an exhibition that was inclusive for everyone. And what we've done is the photographs of the timeline series, or all the photographs actually in the gallery, are hung at an ADA signage level, so that therefore anyone that came into the exhibition would be able to have an optimal viewing angle, as well as with the help of Kate and her wonderful husband, we were able to add audio descriptions. And so those that are visually impaired can come in and do an audio description, as well as there's a touch wall, so you can actually feel the photographs and things like that. So that's one of my biggest passions that has come out of this, is being able to be a voice for others with accessibility needs and to advocate for them as well as myself. And I will turn it over for Olu to share about his story.
My name is Olu Amoda. I from Nigeria, and my family. I studied in Nigeria as well as here. Um, I think we have almost the same kind of passion from childhood, and our moms are our greatest support. I can see your mom in the audience, and I feel, my mom not being here, but I can take, an association with, the mom as well. Yes, she's also my mom. You have a great son who, the very first day we met, we bonded, and we have so much things in common. And so I'm very glad to share the spotlight with him. Very much like his childhood experience, my first experience is drawing on the ground because when in Africa, when we clean, all mostly women clean, they have this broom they use. And it seems to have a reading. Everything you do, work has to be a story, because you wake up every day, you do the same thing. And so I'm so intrigued to see how the women draw lines on the ground. So it's so much like, waves, they move in one direction. And then because we have the courtyard system where, the courtyard is more like the playground, there are no fences when I was growing up, but that has changed a long time. And so in my community, everybody has a skill that is recognized by your peers. And I happen to be the one that recognized as an artist. So I have people who prepare my canvas on the floor, and then I draw. So the only contest that everybody wins is when you do art. Because people who judge you, they judge you because they cannot do, they think it's something magical about it. And the artist lifts his own self to say, well, okay, it's magical. But at the same time, he's humbling in the sense that you spend more time in your studio by yourself. So it is so wonderful to share my experience with all of you that have come out here. And so it's nice to ask questions. It's sometimes challenging to put your background in a very chronological order. But when issues and questions and asked because you experience the work, then it's a whole lot easier for you to expand the conversation. So I don't think we're here to give people any talk, but we're here to share experience based on the response from the audience. And I'm sure somewhere along the line, I might go back to my beginning, because I come from a culture of storytellers, so there's never any instruction given to you, go and do this. They use something to say, well, one day for the thief, no, every day for the thief, one day for the owner. And you ask yourself, what does that mean? Or if you find yourself here, you're driving and there's a speed limit, and then of course you're stopped by the cops and several cars that passes by, they're doing more speed than you. And so you always tend to think, why don't you stop that guy? I'm just only doing 70 and they say, well, it's 65. The police tells you, well, yes, there's other cops on the way that will deal with that, but you're not caught. So for that reason, we try to learn true stories. So I have a lot of story to tell about my work, but that story has to come through the interaction of the audience to tell me, ask me questions. I hope most of you have gone around to see the works, and if you've not, then any question you throw to Graham, because both of us are creative persons, we use our eyes to do a visual construct of our experience. So my work is about, a social construct of what I've seen or experienced, and through my own lens. And I believe that whatever I say, you must have experienced it in one way or the other, but not as true as an artist. So I want to leave it there on the when more question comes or whatever the format takes, we continue the conversation.
Okay. Yeah. So this is one for two of you, okay? So about a half hour ago, the Libra new moon, and we have a solar eclipse as the moon conjuncts the sun. This means the next 2 weeks are going to be quite exciting. And what are you two guys planning on doing in the art world over the next 2 weeks for 2024?
Well, you want to go?
No, you go.
Well, as an artist who spent over 30 years over producing, I see myself as somebody who's stuck in my ways, and I have no other life other than trying to create. So I wake up every morning, I do my school runs, and then go straight to the studio, and I sit down there. For the fact that sometimes if you don't go back home, you have more explanation to make than so you go back. So the next 2 weeks, it's not going to be different from today. I create from the positive side of life, and which means that anywhere I can find beauty, truth, and peace and hope, I work from that. And therefore, the objects that I use, sometimes speak to me in that way. And I try to break the rules, that the manufacturers, instruct us to obey. If you find a bolt or a nut, each of those bolts went through quality control, and they're almost as perfect in their function. And when I come across that, I look at the resistance of that bolt through maybe a wheel nut, and usually the wheel has about 4 nuts. So depending on your mind and your strength, if you have a flat, 3 of those nuts will be willing to lose, and then one gives you some problem. And somehow that gives you the problem, and the way you worked on that almost like condemn that. And so when I come across such a boat, my business, my approach is to ask those questions. What have you done to the user to subject you to that? And in most cases, I find the answers in the instruction the object gives to me in the piece I'm creating. So it's a collaboration, So because my work mode is collaborating with the objects, you know, season.
One of the things I've touched on before, and Olu as well, is through our work we're storytellers, and also through my work I have found that I was just speaking with another person today. Through my work has also been healing, and there's a therapy for yourself. Like Olu said, we spend a lot of time in our studios by ourselves, and so you got a lot of time to think when you're by yourself. And it's kind of that whole your life flashes in front of you thing. And so as I'm sitting there doing the work, I'm constantly sitting there and I'm processing, and what am I feeling? What are the emotions? What are, because to me, we're taking these, intangibles and making them tangible. And to me, the way that happens is if I'm feeling my feelings while I'm making the pieces, those feelings go into it. And then when you experience the piece, my hope is that then you experience that. So you're feeling those emotions come out of that piece, and now it just became something that you can grab onto. And as I'm doing that, I'm not only just thinking about myself, I'm thinking about others and how I can then share my story to help them, and sharing, the experience with others. One of the things that I'm really excited about this week coming up, and how I'm going to change the world, is here at the Hudgens, we're actually going to be hosting a group called Happy Feet. and they are a group of adults with disabilities, and they've aged out of the school systems and things like that, which is, you know, something we don't, if you're not part of it, you don't think about it, which is, you know, one of the things that I've realized I've gone through a lot in my life is being in the gray. And what I mean by that is, you know, you're used to, I've been in the part of the world where I was able-bodied, and then I've been in the part of the world where now I've been disabled. And now I kind of consider myself high-functioning disabled, is, you know, I operate in the gray, and so I can see both sides of the story. I grew up with a lot of that, with the racial ambiguity and things like that. I've always sat in the middle, so I've always had to look and see, where do I belong? And so when I was able to meet the people from Happy Feed, I just immediately connected with them because they ended up in the gray. When you leave high school here in the States, there's no more, for lack of a better, you know, phrase, there's no more babysitter for them. You know, there's nowhere for them to go. They don't have, you know, necessarily things to do anymore. Hope always in any, again, like I said, any exhibition that I do is that it's completely inclusive, that everybody feels welcome to come to. And so to be able to have them come here and create that space for them, where they can come experience something, and hopefully maybe it's, you know, it's that spark for them that then creates a new purpose in them. Maybe they hear a different story. Maybe they, you know, see a picture that they connect with. Laura and I were here one day, and this woman, she just all of a sudden just starts going into the pieces of the timeline series. I felt kind of weird. I'm like, does this woman really know me? Has she been like following me? Like, what's going on? But it was amazing to see. She didn't know my story. She knew her own story, and she was able to see her story in the pieces, and our lives just paralleled. And then that's where the beauty to me happens with art, is when you connect and you never even touch. It's like our stories just completely paralleled each other. I don't know her story, she doesn't know my story, but we were able to connect as human beings because our stories paralleled, and so we walked together and we were able to feel that emotion together. And so so being able to do that this week will hopefully be the way that I change the world.
Well, that's very nice. But when I was in school, I took art, I took music, I took acting, and everything in high school when I was a kid, and I enjoyed it very much. And I learned, but I always noticed that you have to have an origin from where everything grows from here.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that I would like to know where you're from, where's your origin, and where's yours, so I can understand more of your work.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much. That's a beautiful question. And I'm glad you used the word origin. So one of the pieces when you first walk into the gallery, the Georgia Gallery, is a giant sculpted piece, mixed media, and it's titled Origins. Yes, and where that comes from is, again, my fascination with aviation, which was my origin, but also I was able to, it was a way for me to pay respect to the original flying machines. And so the piece that is made of the canvas is to replicate the Da Vinci flying machine, which to me was the original airplane. It's the origins of where the airplane came from. And then to be able to overlay the bird on top of it, which was the original airplane, allowed me to, you know, not only reconnect with flying, but also for me to look at it and be able to have that respect for it again. And so that's where I come from. I come from a family of aviation. I think just about everybody in my family has worked or flown or done something for an airline. So it's always been in my blood. And so to lose that was really tough for me. So now being able to have that reconnection back to it, I hope that you can feel that as part of it when you walk into my gallery and see my work.
Okay, origin is very tough to define and to trace. So it's not a parallel, it's not a straight origin you're talking about, but sometimes, origin is where you come from, and you see how that. So if that is what you want to know, I'm from Nigeria, Africa. And if I want to break it down more, I want to go to my countryside where I grew up. It's called Okere, which means small. And the way you connect with that is to look at your gas price today. And every country that produces oil in the world tends to influence, if there's crisis in one place, the prices of gas goes up. So I probably will take responsibility that sometimes when there's crisis in my home place, it affects the pump price. But having said that, I think you also talked about how you feel that art is inside you. Maybe you're born with that or something of that sort. I was also a professor of art, and I met people who have certain skills, and there are people who ask questions, can it be taught, or are you born with art? I think all of us here, regardless of what you're doing today, are artists, because when you get into your closet, the choice of what you want to wear today is not uninformed choices. It is an artistic choice. You want this to match with that, and even when you're buying things, so that's also the way art, it comes about. But my dad was a goldsmith. My mom was a food vendor, and my mom used to pride herself and say, "Give me salt and water in the kitchen, I'll give you food." My dad, I never met him practicing, but I met his apprentices because they use the guild system. So on my way from school, I passed by that shop, fascinated by the way they work on the anvil. When they are flattening the metal, they have a rhythm, because it's not an easy thing to just keep doing that. So you have to find a rhythm and becomes musical and attracts any young man who is inquisitive. So I go back there and I play with the anvils to make music from it. And of course, because if you're a goldsmith then you have a clientele that is pressed for time. Either they're looking forward to wear the design for a particular function, and once a date is set, the pressure is on the goldsmith. So they don't allow me to spend enough time on the anvils to make my music. But little did I know that I'll become a sculptor, and so the origin is several things that comes into one, but I represent myself today.
I agree with you.
Love art, but I did a lot of things by myself when I was young because I like to do something, and that's just the way that people develop themselves.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I have a question for Dwain and Olu. I'll get to that later. One of the things I want to mention, you referenced that connection with the woman in the gallery, and I happened to be there. What was so profound to me was that she was here at the Hudgens that morning for a therapeutic arts program. She's a survivor of domestic violence, and so she had her own story of healing that Dwain mentioned. He didn't know, and she didn't know his story. Then she shared with us that it was her first time in a gallery or a museum, and she was taking in Dwain's work in a way that just left us speechless. It was such a moving moment.
And full of tears.
Why we're here? Yeah, we were kind of like, he's got the tissue. But I want to ask you, Dwain, are there times, you were forced into this perspective? And one of the things I love about your work, you have the eye, you've got the talent, you've got the passion, but your conceptual approach is really unique and compelling. Are there times when you miss being forced into that perspective, both physically and artistically, like down where everything is at ADA site level? Do you miss the monster sometimes? As an artist?
Yes and no. And I think if I'm understanding you correctly, are you saying like where my disability kind of forced me into the medium and things?
Yeah, and to see things from a very limited scope.
Yes.
Because you found another level of insightfulness in the subject as an artist, because you didn't have the range of mobility.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of pushed you, I think, in your work to really capture these moments.
Yes, absolutely. And there's there's a lot of them. I think it's the first and the 10th photograph of the timeline series are, I remember when I was looking at them, and I might have been writing something about them at one time, and and I was writing about how my perspective had changed, and then I realized with those two photographs, my perspective had actually really changed, because at one point, and I still have to use it sometimes, I have a mobility scooter. And when I took those two photographs, I was in my scooter. And so that's what gives them that unique angle, was not just my perspective on the world having to change because now I have this disability and how do I operate in it and things like that, but my actual camera lens perspective changed. And so again, to me, it's not only am I able to give a visual and a voice to my own story, I'm able for you to hopefully be able to experience what it is like for somebody else from a different perspective, which again was the same in lowering the photographs to the ADA level. It is a convenient.
What you're doing, and you could take that as literally as just the different media. But I wanted to hear your impressions of each other's exhibitions.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, Olu.
Well, usually you look at the things you have in common than the things you don't have in common. I bumped into Dwayne when I came to the exhibition, my exhibition, I didn't know he was exhibiting, and we met in the front desk. And my first reaction was that I didn't like the photo of me on your display,
That's right.
you know, because the last maybe 15 years when if you're traveling through the TSA, it's always like a mugshot. When you meet the immigration, they ask you questions. It's like you're a criminal before they know you're a criminal. And so there's always that tension in me. And so I was reacting to that. And then he says, "Oh, I have an exhibition." And I walked in there, I was very fascinated with his piece in the sense that we talked about it before that when you talk about a flying machine, it's to move people from place to place. And so there's always the beauty of looking at yourself from above, and even for an artist, when you want to emphasize certain building, the certain perspective view you give in order for you to give it a size. As a kid, a story building looks so high, which is about 12 feet, and when we're told that, oh, somebody dropped from 12 feet and survived, it looks like dropping from 14th floor as a kid. And then as you start growing up, your perspective started fitting into the dimension. And then you find that in Olympics, somebody does pole vault, 14 feet, world record, high jump, 6 feet, world record, state record. And so Dwayne's work allowed me to go back into that period where I was struggling with, putting perspective into dimensions. So I immediately look at him, that most of the shots, the era shots, okay, he took them from above. But for me to appreciate it, I have to look at it from the ground, and so he gives me that opportunity to look at his work through his lens, but I also have to fit into my own consciousness to look at it. So we have a very interesting conversation. And I don't see much of a difference between the way he approaches work and the way I does with mine, in the sense that both of us, and I think I talk about the hunter and the hunted, So I'm not sure whether he's the hunter or I'm the hunted, but we just suppose that kind of relationship because sometimes, I take my work, and I need a camera to document it in order to transmit it. So in that sense, we are on the same level. And sometimes I'm curious to ask him, what did I do wrong with a photograph? But today, we have a professional here recording everything. But I also saw that Kate has a phone, Laura has a phone. So everybody is a photographer today. And what makes a good photograph is the consumer of it. So his approach, is very something that allows me to connect with my past and also allow me to reaffirm my presence and also make me want to continue with what I'm doing, that I'm not insane. So that's the way I looked at his work. I don't know if that responds to your question.
Very good. Thank you, Olu. I appreciate your perspective on it and the compliments and just your friendship too also. I mean, we, like Olu said, we just, it was fate. We both were setting up. We didn't know each other was going to be here, and we bumped into each other, and then our stories collided. And I remember the very first thing that I noticed when I went into Olu's exhibition was I'm a huge fan of wood. Wood to me is always so very warm, and one of my greatest loves is the trees, the pine trees here in Georgia. I always say that they feel like this warm hug for me. So I've always been fascinated with wood and the story it can tell. And when I went into Olu's exhibition and I see all this metal, but it made me feel just as warm as those trees did. I think I was sitting there. I think Jeff was hanging, and I was literally like a little kid. I was probably in everybody's way, and I just was sitting there with my mouth open the entire time, because the abilities his artistic ability is just absolutely amazing to begin with. But to me, again, Olu referenced a photograph. To me, it's like a picture is a snapshot of something. Anybody can take a snapshot. We all have cameras these days, and we can all take a picture. To me, when it becomes a photograph is when it develops a soul. And that's what I call a photograph, is it has a meaning, it has a purpose to it. And that was, I could immediately feel that in Olu's work, was that his work wasn't just these beautiful sculptures put together, but they were these beautiful, organic, even like the one where you come in, that woman is like truly there to me when you go in there. You can feel her expressions. You can, she tells you the story as soon as you walk in there. And that to me is always what I'm looking for as being an artist, but also in being inspired by going to see other artists. I was telling Olu earlier, I love looking at other photographs, but my intent is not to see somebody else's work and go try to figure out how to make that then my own work. My intent in going to see other artwork is hopefully it's going to spark something in my creativity. And that's what Olu's work was able to do for me, you know, coming in here and seeing what he had put together and to feel the emotions that were in it were just another piece for me to be able to, you know, see how he took something which I would think is so cold, the metal, the steels and things like that, and the warmth and the life that he gave them to me is just an absolute superior mark of an artist to be able to do something like that.
Thank you.
Yes.
You guys are ready?
Okay, sounds good. Any more questions? Okay.
So I have to ask you, Hudgens Prize. As the Hudgens Prize recipient, congratulations. How has it changed you so far? What opportunities have been made available to you that maybe you didn't anticipate? Or thoughts on being the recipient?
Well, there are many things that the prize has done for me. When you use the word prize, it looks at the monetary component of it. Of course, I used to work in the studio from just the overhang of the studio, and with the prize, I was able to build a shed, so protect myself from the elements, you know, and that's a major. And I also became independent because I was able to acquire some of the machines, you know, so I definitely put it into good use. You know, I want to take a moment to recognize my artist, Helder, who wants to live, but the wife is not willing to live. So, you know, when you are talking to a crowd, movement around is a communication, and you know, the body language, sometimes the non-verbal communication sometimes get across. So if you really need to excuse yourself, we'll be glad to let you go. And of course, we're going to get in touch with you on the impact of the prize. But most importantly, when I came in here, there are two important people in front of the audience, you know, who perhaps are accessory to my being the recipient. You know, I got an email from Kate that is coming for a studio visit. I was in Iran, I was out of town, and then they came with three other magnificent people who, they are jurors who will decide whether you know, take the prize or not, you know, and I know it's a difficult experience for them. But at that moment, you know, I felt like we all will do when you are in the studios, nobody coming to see you, you feel just to yourself. And then 3, 4 people came, you know, 2 ladies and 2 guys came, and they were talking, you know, I mean, they didn't just look at my piece, they also researched me and were engaging me in the kind of conversation that I think I love to, because people they didn't just ask you about you, I mean, they asked you about the issues your work evokes, and they wanted to be sure. I don't know whether they wanted to be sure, but at least it gave me an opportunity to share my experience with them. And then I walked into the space. I fell in love with the gallery space. So I went to Laura and I said to her, I know it's a contest. The result is not out. But I want you to commit something to me. Win or lose, are you going to give me a solo show? So Laura says, well, I don't know about that, but win first and then we'll talk about that. So fast forward, I won and I got my wish. So the prize itself is, yes, huge in terms of it transformed, my working environment, provide me with funds. But I think most importantly is meeting the soul, the people I see in front of me, the smile. There's no way I can get that being at home or through the social media because, touching people who have their own personal experience, that in itself is very uplifting. And I'm not sure where it will go, but certainly it starts something inside me that has the propensity to grow. So the prize is behind now, but the growth continues. So I want to thank Jamel, for meeting in the post. I have not seen him for a long time. Of course, Kate, two of us, we are partners in crime, and I'm sure we're going to meet next week again to host some students, So the prize is wonderful, but most importantly, also meeting people, connecting with people, is more fulfilling, than that. That's what the prize has done for me. Yeah. Okay.
Wonderful. Thank you all so much.
I really appreciate everybody being here. Thank you.